So the rest of Genesis chapter 11, starting in verse 10 and going all the way down to 32, really connects Shem, which is one of the sons of Noah, to Abram, which is where the story is going to turn to, and we'll eventually get to the nation of Israel. But there's a few things to really point out here. Number one is we see that people are starting to live less years in their lives. Shem lives 600 years old, and it gets down to the end to about 150 or 200 years. So we see people living not as long. And then he goes on to talk about Terah, who is the father of Abram. And he has three sons, Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran, unfortunately, dies before Terah does. So we see in this chapter a father outliving his son. And then also it talks about Sarai, which is Abram's wife, and that she's barren. And so this is just kind of a sad chapter, isn't it? We already talked about the Tower of Babel, and then we talk about these things before we get to hope that God gives to Abram by saying he's going to make a nation of him in the next chapter. So just a few things to point out is just that the time that people live is getting shorter, that we have to see a father outliving his son. We see a woman who's barren. And the interesting thing is that Terah, which is Abram's father, was going to take his family to Canaan, but they stop short, and he actually dies in the city that's named after his deceased son, Haran, also. And so we see an unaccomplished goal. And it might even be that he just lived in the pain that he experienced, since the name of this city was also the name of his son who passed away. So it's just a sad chapter. But it doesn't stay there, because we're going to see that there's going to be hope in this next chapter, and God's going to make things right. It's not good for us, is it? It's not good for us to live outside of God and away from God and outside of His commands and just His relationship. And that's what we're seeing here, is just a lot of pain that came about because we're in a sinful world, and unfortunately God isn't going to leave us there. He's going to make some promises to Abram and turn him into Abraham, and eventually bring Israel, which gave us the Bible, and eventually the Messiah who's going to make all things right.